This series of films introduces this weapon to you, shows you how it works and how it is handled. Here, it is being brought into action and mounted on its pedestal. You will notice how easily and quickly the wheels come off. Later on, in another part of this film, you will see the detailed drill of how this is done. There it is, on its pedestal mounting. And here's the gun firing. Remarkably steady, isn't it?
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Armourer's Bench. The interwar period saw many countries underinvest in their militaries, and Britain was no exception. One area of equipment that went lacking for many years was adequate anti-tank weaponry. This was finally addressed in the mid-1930s by the gun we're looking at today, the 2-pounder anti-tank gun. Designed by the Superintendent of Design at Woolwich Arsenal, the 2-pounder was adopted in 1936, officially designated the Ordnance QF 2-pounder Mark IX. The 2-pounder was an attempt to provide a light and mobile, high-velocity anti-tank gun, which was relatively cheap to produce and effective against contemporary tank armour. It was also intended that the gun would itself be mounted in armoured vehicles and tanks. In 1934, development contracts were awarded to Woolwich and the Vickers-Armstrong Company for the design of carriages for the new gun. This resulted in the Vickers Mark I and the Mark II from Woolwich. The Mark I had a slightly different armoured shield and leg design. In these photos we can see the Vickers carriage's flat-faced shield and how the road wheels remain attached, unlike the Woolwich designed carriage. The two carriages were tested against one another, with trials taking place between November 1935 through to the summer of 1936. The Vickers design initially won out, and the first order for 44 guns was placed in 1936. A subsequent re-evaluation of an improved version of Woolwich's carriage found it superior, and the Mark II carriage was adopted instead. The 2-pounder fired a 40 by 304mm rimmed armour-piercing round, which weighed 2 pounds 6 ounces or around 900 grams. It was effective out to 1,000 yards against armour up to 1.5 inches thick. The gun had a 4-man crew and was capable of firing up to 20 rounds per minute. It had an all-steel barrel with a removable breech ring and a vertically sliding breech block. The gun had an innovative and very stable 3-legged collapsible platform, rather than a split-trail carriage. This allowed the gun to be rotated through 360 degrees when its road wheels were removed. The 2-pounder had a semi-automatic action with hydraulic or hydrospring recoil system, which used hydraulic fluid to absorb the gun's recoil. This allowed the gun to be rapidly aimed and fired despite recoiling up to 20 inches. A number of variants of the gun were developed during the war. The first was the original Mark IX. This was followed by a simplified production model, the Mark IXA. The Mark X had a barrel that was made of higher yield steel, which made it easy to manufacture. And finally, the Mark Xa, which was produced to slightly lower tolerances and able to use the Little John adapter. Weighing around 1,800 pounds or 816 kilograms, the 2-pounder was deemed to be too heavy for the infantry it had been designed for, and in 1938 it was transferred to the Royal Artillery. Typically, the guns were grouped together in anti-tank battalions, each with 3 batteries made up of 4 troops, which operated 4 guns each. That's 16 guns per battery and 48 guns per battalion. Typically, in the field, a battalion would be assigned to support a division. The guns were designed to be towed by a variety of vehicles, including trucks, jeeps, and universal carriers. The 2-pounder was typically equipped with the number 24B 2-power sighting telescope, located on the left side of the gun. It also had an iron sight, but the top half of the armoured shield had to be lowered to use it. On the right side of the breech, an ammunition box holding 16 rounds was stored for easy access, and another 2 boxes holding 8 rounds each could be strapped onto the carriage behind the ammunition box. The rest of the ammunition, in 12 more 8-round containers, was carried in the truck which towed the gun. In total, 96 rounds were assigned per gun. The gun layer sat on a small seat mounted to the carriage, and the loader knelt to the right of the breech. The gun was turned by a small traversing wheel operated by the gun layer. In the low gear, one rotation of the wheel would turn the gun 3 degrees, but in the higher gear, activated by the right foot pedal, one rotation traversed the gun 20 degrees. This meant the gun could be traversed the full 360 degrees with 18 rotations of the wheel. The right-hand wheel controlled the elevation of the barrel, and the gun's elevation could be depressed 13 degrees and raised 15 degrees. In a moment we'll take a look at a clip from a British Army training film that demonstrates how the gun could be rotated and elevated. First though, let's take a closer look at the controls. On the right is the traverse gear pedal, and on the left we have the firing pedal. Here we can see the elevation wheel, and next to it the traversing wheel. Let's take a look at a demonstration of the controls in action.
He traverses it by the traversing hand wheel which is in his left hand. One turn of this gives a traverse of 3 degrees. If he depresses the right foot pedal, a high gear is engaged, and one turn of the hand wheel gives 20 degrees of traverse. Let us look at this from the front. Here we see one turn giving 3 degrees, or by using the foot pedal, one turn giving 20 degrees. An added advantage is that the gun has an all-round traverse of 360 degrees. Now to elevate and depress. This is done by the elevating hand wheel in the right hand of the layer. Watch the barrel. Elevation, depression. Let us see how this hand wheel is controlled. This is it. Watch the barrel. Elevation, depression.
The gun was fired by the gun layer using the left foot pedal, or one of the 2 emergency firing levers if the foot pedal became inoperable. While the breech would typically open automatically, ejecting the spent shell casing after firing, a breech handle was also located on the right-hand side of the breech. The gun could be brought in and out of action in under a minute, including removing or replacing its road wheels. We can see this being demonstrated in this British Army training film.
We will now study the detail of the drill more closely. Here is the drill complete, the finished article. Number 1, ordered halt, action left, 2 containers.
The gun's crew quickly sets up its front legs and removes its road wheels. The gunner then mounts the gun and turns it towards the target. An ammunition carrier brings up 2 containers of ammunition, and the gun prepares to go into action.
35 seconds into action. Good going.
The 2-pounder could, however, be fired from its road wheels. This was described as emergency action. The wheels limited the traversing arc of the gun, and turns greater than 14 degrees to the right or 10 degrees to the left had to be done by lifting the gun's trail and turning it manually. While perhaps less stable and accurate, the gun could be brought into action from being towed in less than 20 seconds. In 1939, the British Expeditionary Force to France embarked with 509 2-pounders. During the Battle of France in 1940, the 2-pounder was found to be an adequate anti-tank gun. One problem identified with the gun was that its tall armoured shield, designed to protect the crew, gave it quite a high profile, making it easier to spot and more difficult to conceal. Another shortcoming of the gun was that it never had a suitable high explosive round, limiting its effectiveness against infantry and non-armoured targets. A HE round was designed, but it was never placed in production. During the retreat to Dunkirk and the subsequent evacuation, all of the guns brought to France were lost. That's 60% of Britain's 2-pounder anti-tank guns left behind in France, with just the 333 guns which didn't accompany the BEF remaining in Britain. Many of the guns captured after the Dunkirk evacuations entered German service and were designated the 4cm Pak 192E. As the thickness of enemy armour increased, the 2-pounder began to struggle. The German Panzer II had frontal armour 1.2 inches thick, while the Panzer III more than doubled this to 2.8 inches. On paper at least, the 2-pounder, firing an armour-piercing high-velocity round, could penetrate up to 2.2 inches of armour at 500 yards. But in reality, the Panzer III was the last German tank that the 2-pounder could expect to engage with a decent chance of success. With the emergence of the later variants of the Panzer III and the Panzer IV, with its 50mm or 2-inch thick frontal armour, the 2-pounder became much less effective. If not adequately concealed, the gun crews could expect to be engaged by AP and high explosive rounds from the Panzers at ranges outside their effective engagement range. While increasing frontal armour proved a problem for the 2-pounder, thinner armour at the sides and rear of tanks could still be penetrated by concealing the guns to enable them to fire at these weaker points. Camouflaging the guns became an essential part of this, and both winter kit and camouflage netting was used to hide the gun's tall profile. Despite this, the 2-pounder proved to be more than a match for Japanese tanks, such as the Type 95 light tank, which had armour less than an inch thick. At the Battle of Muar in Malaya in January 1942, Australian 2-pounders of the 13th Battery, the 4th Anti-Tank Regiment, knocked out 6 or more Japanese tanks as they attacked along a road near Bakrai, and the commander of one of the guns, Sergeant Charles Parsons, was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for his actions. Lieutenant Ben Hackney of the Australian 2nd 29th Battalion described the engagement. A couple attempted to turn and make a getaway, but still those boys with the anti-tank guns were sending a stream of shells into them. At last they could not move forward any further and became as pillboxes, surrounded, sending fire in all directions, until one by one they were smashed, set on fire, and rendered useless and uninhabitable. There came then from the tanks sounds which resembled an Empire Day celebration, as the ammunition within them burnt and cracked with sharp bursts and hissed, with every now and again a louder explosion as larger ammunition ignited. The 2-pounder remained capable of destroying heavier Japanese tanks too, such as the Type 97 medium tank, which had 1-inch thick frontal armour. The 2-pounder could easily penetrate this at ranges of more than 1,500 yards. In addition to being used as a towed anti-tank gun, the QF 2-pounder was used in a wide range of light and cruiser tanks. It provided the main armament for the Matilda Mark II, the Mark 7 Tetrach light tank, the first 6 marks of the Valentine infantry tank, the Mark I and Mark II Crusaders, the cruiser Marks 1 through 4, the Covenanter, and was also used in the Australian cruiser tank, the AC-1 Sentinel. It was also used to arm a variety of armoured cars, including the Daimler, the Mark I AEC, the Mark I Coventry, and some variants of the Marmon Harrington armoured car. In the desert it was also mounted and operated simply on the back of adapted trucks known as portees. The 2-pounder was deployed on its tripod, directly on the truck bed. In this setup the guns became highly mobile, with the crews able to operate the gun from the truck, able to move in and out of action rapidly. They were widely used in North Africa, with a number of medals including a Victoria Cross being awarded to the men who manned them. One of the anti-tank gunners that was decorated was 2nd Lieutenant George Ward Gunn of J Battery, Royal Horse Artillery. He was awarded a posthumous Victoria Cross for his actions in November 1941 during Operation Crusader. Gunn commanded a troop of 4 portee 2-pounders, which engaged a German counter-attack head-on. With all but one of his guns knocked out and the remaining gun's crew killed and its truck on fire. Lieutenant Gunn quickly manned the 2-pounder himself. Engaging the enemy at 800 yards, he managed to destroy 2 panzers before he himself was killed. The example we're examining today began its life as a Mark 9, but was subsequently upgraded to a Mark 10A, capable of using a Little John adapter. The Little John adapter used the squeeze bore principle. The device was about a foot long, with a smooth tapered bore. With the adapter fitted to the muzzle of the 2-pounder, the round would be compressed by the taper, going from 40mm to 30mm in diameter. This had the effect of increasing the muzzle velocity, giving the round a flatter trajectory and more energy. An armour-piercing composite non-rigid round with a tungsten core was used, designated the APSV, or armour-piercing super velocity round. It had the effect of almost doubling the muzzle velocity of the APSV round when compared to the original 2-pounder AP shell. The adapter was invented by a Czech designer, František Janacek, whose name I've probably just hideously mispronounced. He's best known for being the founder of the famous Jawa motorcycle company. The Mark I Little John device entered production in January 1943, and the Mark II was approved in May 1944. While the design of the 6-pounder anti-tank gun, the 2-pounder's replacement, had been completed in 1938, production did not begin until 1942. Following the huge losses after Dunkirk, and with invasion believed to be imminent, the decision was taken to focus on the 2-pounder, as its production line was already established. The guns remained in service throughout the war, equipping anti-tank batteries and armoured vehicles. Over 34,000 2-pounder anti-tank guns were produced between 1936 and 1944. Over 11,000 of these were deployed as anti-tank guns on carriages, while the rest were used in various vehicles. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this look at something a little bit bigger than usual. If you'd like to know more, check out our accompanying blog over at armourersbench.com. Please like, share and subscribe. Sharing the video with friends really helps the channel to grow. If you'd like to support us, please consider checking out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description box below. Tab is an entirely viewer-supported project, and your help is very much appreciated. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.